Hi friends, welcome back. Everything kind of hit the fan between my last video and this one over the last couple of weeks. So this is not going to be the most exciting and positive of update videos, but these things happen and it's important to highlight when things do not go according to plan. So since I last filmed, I found out that my company is not doing raises now anymore. This used to be the normal time of year for them to be done. They will now be done in March, along with when we usually get our bonus and have our performance reviews, which, does make sense, but that's 6 months of income for everybody at the company that we will not have. So that's obviously not ideal, but all of my budgets out through the middle of next year assume that I have no raise, so it doesn't really impact me in the sense that it's not changing my plans in any way. It's just kind of frustrating. So that happened. Then over the weekend, immediately following that, I was on my way out to the barn to see my horse and had an unfortunate encounter with a deer, which is very common in the area where I live, but not something anyone ever wants to have happen, so that broke my headlight assembly and cracked my bumper. So my car is now down at the body shop getting repaired. So I currently have a rental. Most of the cost is covered by my insurance, but I am responsible for paying the damage waiver, which I do get, just in case something does happen while I have the rental. So I'm out money for that. Thankfully, my parents insisted on paying for me to have a rental car to drive to my friend's wedding even before the deer encounter because they didn't want me to take my car 1,300 miles round trip in a weekend. So we were covered on that front, but this is the second time this year that my car has been to the body shop to have the front bumper replaced. A tree fell on it back in May when we had a horrible windstorm here. So I'm just not having a good track record with vehicles, and this is just increasing the need to get all of my finances under control so that I can get a new car. Work has also been crazy because of quarter close. I work for a publicly traded company, so we're in the middle of trying to get everything ready to report to the SEC, and that has taken up so much time that I literally left to drive halfway to South Carolina last week on Thursday, 5 minutes after I finished working. Because of that, I also did not have time to actually make a packing list and make sure that I had everything that I needed, so I ended up with a whole bunch of stuff that was not in my bag that I actually needed to have with me. So there were multiple pit stops to pick things up that I needed for the weekend, which obviously blew my budget for that trip completely. So long story short, all of this has completely eaten away my checking account cushion. It is gone. And that's okay. I'll build it back up. It will be fine. I was able to pay off every single thing that I put on my credit cards within this past week after I got back. So I'm not further in the hole, at least, but things are slightly more precarious than they were. So I'm going to take you guys through my budget from my last paycheck and show some of the damage, not all of it, some of it, since, again, not everything that wasn't budgeted for actually makes it on here, but take a spin through it anyway. Paycheck, usual, $2,717.09. I came in about $3 under my fixed expenses budget just because, again, I round up when I budget out off of the cents. So ended up about $3 in savings due to the actual cost of these various things, which brought me down to $25.0816. Therapy was the usual $50 for my bi-weekly session. Gas, I did go over budget. I underestimated how many times I was going to have to fill up between driving down, driving back, and filling up the rental before I dropped it back off. So ended up coming in at $137.36, which was $37.36 over budget, which brought me down to a leftover of $2,320.80. Savings, same as usual, $955, which brought me down to a leftover amount of $1,365.80. And then my debt payments, I ended up coming in 4 cents under what I budgeted because of the Affirm payment not being round, which brought me down to a payment total of $1,373.96, which made my leftover amount negative $8.16. So over budget by almost $10 on the stuff that was in here. As far as other things that are not listed on here go, I had my tolls refill for the first time in probably 2 years, since I'm almost never on a tolled road, but I was on several going to South Carolina and coming back. Food, which honestly, there wasn't a ton of it. I had to pay for breakfast on Saturday and food driving down and driving back, but basically all the rest of my meals were covered by being at the wedding, so that at least worked out fairly well. I don't have an exact total on that. I want to say I probably ended up spending around $75 on food for 4 days, which honestly not terrible. And then obviously hotel and the things that I had to buy because I needed them for the weekend and did not pack them. At least basically everything that I bought is stuff that I will be using until I run out of it, or in the case of a couple things that were articles of clothing that I needed, I will be re-wearing those. I didn't buy anything that was a single-use item, really, so at least my cost per use will continue to go down as I use and wear them, but not ideal. All told, my checking account cushion is down to about $100, which don't want that, don't like that, but it is what it is. So we will continue moving forward from here and put this in the rearview mirror and take comfort in the fact that I was able to pay all of this off immediately rather than leaving a balance on my credit cards. All right, now on to my next paycheck, which arrived today because it is the 17th. October is at least a 3 paycheck month, so that will be nice. All of my benefits are calculated assuming that there are only 24 pay periods in the year, which means that when I get my 3rd paycheck in a 3 paycheck month, my health insurance and all of that are not deducted. So it's usually $100 to $150 higher than my normal paycheck amount. So that will be nice. Fixed expenses for this paycheck are pretty low. Just my YouTube stuff, basically. So 2 YouTube memberships, and then my YouTube Premium, which I actually need to update because I have agreed with my parents that I will upgrade to the family plan so that they can watch ad-free, because they are also watching a ton of YouTube these days. And since I canceled Hulu, it feels appropriate to cover that at least for them. So that brings my fixed expenses for the pay period to $28 and brings my leftover amount down to $26.89. Life is back to normal now, so I'm going to budget $75 for gas and $50 for therapy. So $125 total for my variable expenses, which brings my leftover to $25.64. And then the usual for the savings, money into my horse fund, which is its own obnoxious thing right now, in that he is on multiple supplements, and somehow this month I have the joy of all of them refilling at once, even though they are not on the same refill schedule. So that is like probably $1,000 worth of supplements, or close to it anyway. So all of his supplements are covered by his bank account, but it's just one heck of a hit, particularly given that our vet is also coming to town the last weekend of the month. Well, actually, not the last weekend of the month. Halloween to November 1st. So I will also be paying for his vet bills again, which I do every 6 weeks, but the timing on everything is just not fun at the moment. Is that how my math works? Hang on. That's not how my math works. I only want this to be 50. Why did I write 150 on that? This brings my total down to 1609. And then the credit card payments that are coming out of here are going to be my Chase and both of my Discovers, which actually have not closed yet. They close in the next week. So these are going to get scheduled, but they are not going to come out of my account until next week because I already made the payment for this statement period. My highest interest rate card, I'm actually going to make an extra payment of $100 towards it this pay period because I know I can. And then this one is just going to be the same as usual, which puts me at 237 left over, which is pretty good. And I actually might end up moving another $100 to my emergency fund. We'll see where I'm at when I get to the end of the pay period, and then I will make a decision on whether I'm going to move it there or move it to my highest interest card. So all told, if you back out my almost $10 of going over budget, last pay period, I'm at around $228 left over. So checking account cushion will be around $300, which I do not love, but again, we will build back up. In my next few paychecks, I have a decent amount more breathing room than I did in my September paychecks and the first paycheck of October, so we will manage. As for the other updates, we get to color in exactly 1 star here. My Chase on my last statement was down to a balance of $16,651.85, so I'm down another % on my utilization here. I look forward to the day when I get to color in multiple stars off of 1 payment, but that will take time. And progress is still progress, so we're just going to keep reminding ourselves of that even when it is incredibly slow going. So that's the update on this, and then the only other update that I have for today is an update on my credit score, which is really no update at all, actually. My experience score is still the same as it was last month, so no real change here, which, you know, not that surprising given that my balance decrease is not that large. Kind of sad to not be able to report any improvement on this part, but since I am only tracking my experience score on here, it's just going to be that way. My Equifax score actually did go up, so happy about that at least. It's actually higher than this. So we are still at 667. Hopefully in the next couple of months, as I continue to pay balances down and seriously reduce my utilization, at least on my highest interest rate card, this will continue to go up, but we will see. Again, the fact that I have the balances that I do and my credit score is still here is a relief, because it could be so much worse. And I still have not stopped saving, putting money into retirement, etc. One non-monetary update, sort of, because it will be monetary in the future, is that I had my first set of restricted stock units from my job vest last week. So that automatically increased my investment amount and my net worth. I did have to do a rough tax calc to make sure that they sold enough shares to cover the taxes on it. And I think they actually ended up selling a little bit more than they had to, which is good because it will cover some of the tax that I owe on something else. But I am scraping by not bumping up into the next marginal bracket by like this much. It's so close. So I'm glad it didn't bump me up, and it's looking like I'm actually only going to end up owing $200 to $400 in additional taxes based on what I have calculated out now. We will see if that holds, but that is much easier for me to build into my budget for the beginning of next year. It honestly probably will end up just being something that I take out of my bonus when I get it, but we'll see. Depends on how I'm feeling. I'll be able to cover it either way, but that was a nice thing to have come through. and I will have more units vesting next year at 2 different points, actually. So I'm definitely not going to be selling them anytime soon because I do not want to get hit with a penalty capital gains rate, but it is nice to have some other stock out there that isn't just what's in my 401k. So stay tuned to see when I get really annoyed when it inevitably pushes me into the next tax bracket, because that's probably going to be what happens next year. It is marginal, so it's only on the dollars over that value, but still don't love when that happens. That is all the updates for this video. Again, not very exciting. It's not going to be until probably sometime in December, assuming I hold to what I had estimate budgeted out earlier this year, but I appreciate the company nonetheless. And thanks again to everyone who has subscribed, liked, commented, all the things. Again, would keep doing it even if that wasn't happening, but it's nice to have people coming along. Catch you guys in a couple of weeks, and hopefully then I will not have completely eaten through everything in my checking account. Bye, guys.